When you're playing a video game, it's really fulfilling to be the hero. Swooping in and saving the day certainly is a rush, no doubt, but sometimes it can be a little boring to be a goody two-shoes all the time. Every so often, it's fun to let off some steam by being the bad guy, and although we know full well that the actions of our favourite antagonists are often beyond reprehensible, we still can't help but want to jump into their shoes and wreak some havoc from time to time. For today's list, we're looking at some of the games that give players the opportunity to experience life from the point of view of the baddies, whether it's for the entire game or just for a small portion of its runtime. Fair warning, we will be covering some major plot points for a few of our entries, and so a spoiler warning is very much in effect. I'm the utterly dastardly Ben from TripleJump, and here are 10 video games that let you play as the villain. Number 10. Bowser. Mario and Luigi, Bowser's Inside Story. Over the years, Bowser has aligned himself with Mario and chums on a number of occasions, so you might be forgiven for thinking that he's not all that bad. Still, sometimes we do have to put our differences with our enemies aside for the greater good, as is the case in Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story. All is not well in the Mushroom Kingdom, although when is it ever? After being unceremoniously ejected from a meeting at Peach's castle, Bowser ends up getting tricked into eating a lucky mushroom and inhaling half of the kingdom's citizens, leaving Mario and Luigi with no choice but to team up with him to resolve this snotty mess. Players' time is split between controlling the Mario brothers and Bowser, and they must use the latter to traverse the world and track down Forful, the mad scientist responsible for the trio's predicament. We'd love to tell you that this foray into heroism was a turning point for Bowser, but sadly he almost immediately goes back to his villainous ways. Oh well. Number 9. The Killers, Dead by Daylight. I was going to take this opportunity to make a joke about Las Vegas rock band The Killers, but somebody told me you guys wouldn't appreciate. Right, get the writer on the phone, tell her she's fired for that one. If you're in the market for a great spooky multiplayer title, then you could do far worse than 2016's Dead by Daylight. The premise is quite simple. 4 survivors are trapped in an arena and must escape by repairing the generators that power the door. Sadly, they're not alone in there, and so not only do they have to wrap their heads around a bunch of complex machinery, but they also have to avoid meeting a somewhat sticky end at the hands of whichever killer has been assigned to them. Players can, of course, choose whether they'd prefer to play as the survivors or the killer, though let's face it, the latter is way more fun. Those who do opt for the fiendish role get to choose from a whole smorgasbord of villains, including the likes of Nemesis of Resident Evil 3 fame, Amanda Young from Saw, and Silent Hill 2 baddie Pyramid Head. You know, assuming you've bought all the DLC. Number 8. Dr. Neo Cortex, Crash Twinsanity. Over the years, Dr. Neo Cortex has caused more than his fair share of chaos. He first showed up in 1996's Crash Bandicoot, where his plans for world domination were ultimately thwarted by the eponymous Crash, and since then, he's committed more nefarious deeds than most people have had hot dinners. For Crash Twinsanity though, Cortex and Crash were forced to put their differences aside in order to fend off a common enemy. The game's story takes place 3 years after the events of the Wrath of Cortex, and sees Crash and Cortex facing off against a pair of interdimensional parrots who are hell-bent on destroying Insanity Island. Oh no. Admittedly, Crash Twinsanity isn't the best game in the Crash Bandicoot franchise, garnering review scores in the mid-60s, but critics did have praise for the gameplay that allowed players to control Crash and Cortex at the same time. Yes, the controls might have been a bit wonky and the camera was sometimes uncooperative, but many players soon forgot about that the second they were able to use Cortex's body as a snowboard. You know, I think I'm starting to understand why Cortex doesn't like Crash all that much. Number 7. Dr. Eggman, Sonic Adventures 2. We're moving from one perennial pain in the arse to another now as we turn our attention to Sonic's arch-nemesis, Dr. Eggman. Eggman, or Dr. Ivo Robotnik if you want to get serious about this, has been the primary antagonist of the Sonic the Hedgehog series ever since it debuted in 1991, and no matter how many times he gets his own butt handed to him by everyone's favourite spiny blue mammal, he never seems to learn his bloody lesson. Unlike the vast majority of entries into the franchise in which players solely take on the role of the good guys, Sonic Adventure 2 gave them the opportunity to be a little bad. The game presents players with 2 different stories, one in which Sonic, Tails and Knuckles attempt to save the world, and another where Shadow, Eggman and Rouge the Bat try to conquer it. The latter features a number of levels that put players in control of Eggman, but rather than tasking them with platforming, they're instead plonked into a mech and given the chance to engage in a spot of multi-directional shooting. It might be dastardly, but it's also a hell of a lot of fun. Pew pew. Number 6. Haytham Kenway, Assassin's Creed 3. Now, we don't particularly like being tricked here at Team TripleJump, but we're willing to make an exception in the case of Assassin's Creed 3, a game which successfully had us all rooting for the wrong character, for a time, at least. Assassin's Creed 3 is largely set during the 18th century, and for the majority of the game's runtime, players control Connor, a half-English, half-Mohawk ancestor of series regular Desmond Miles, as he fights the Templars and attempts to stop them from gaining control of the colonies. However, for the first part of the game, players are deceived into believing that Connor's father, Haytham Kenway, is the game's protagonist, apart from, all the marketing material and the fact that he's not on the box. In the year 1754, players jump into Haytham's shoes and, on instruction from his order, assassinate a man at the opera to steal a piece of Eden and use it to try and access the Grand Temple. However, it later transpires that this order for whom Haytham is working for is none other than, wait for it, the Templars! Dun dun dun! That's right, for a good 2.5 hours we were all fooled into backing the wrong horse, and what a scumbag that horse turned out to be. Sure hope his son doesn't kill him. Number 5. Scott Shelby, Heavy Rain. When Heavy Rain was released in 2010, its final twist shook players to their very core. These days, though, the fact that private investigator Scott Shelby is actually the villain of the piece comes as a shock to absolutely no one, and if it does come as a shock to you, then we're sorry. In our defense, though, you've had over a decade to play the game. Over the course of Heavy Rain's runtime, players control 4 different characters. There's Sad Dad Ethan Mars, a man who just can't stop losing track of his kids, journalist Madison Page, FBI profiler Naaman Jaden, and PI Scott Shelby. For the majority of the game, players are led to believe that all 4 characters are trying to locate Ethan's missing son, Sean, who has been kidnapped by the notorious origami killer. However, it's eventually revealed that Scott hasn't been working to find the boy at all and is instead simply trying to cover his tracks by masquerading as a private eye and disposing of any incriminating evidence. Would we still want to play as Shelby if we'd known his true intentions from the outset? Probably not. But do we applaud Heavy Rain for pulling the wool over our eyes and tricking us into aiding a serial killer? Also, no, because now we feel really, really guilty. Number 4. Abby, The Last of Us Part 2. Oh, would you look at that, everyone? It's one of those wildcard entries that Peter's so fond of. Like The Last of Us Part 1 before it, The Last of Us Part 2 gives players the opportunity to experience its story from the point of view of more than one character. This time, rather than stepping into the shoes of Joel and Ellie, players take control of the now 19-year-old Ellie and Abby, a soldier of the Washington Liberation Front and Ellie's arch-nemesis. If we look at The Last of Us Part 2 from the perspective of Ellie, then indeed Abby is the villain. After all, within the first couple of hours of the game's runtime, Abby has beaten Joel to death with a golf club before Ellie's very eyes. But let's take a step back though, shall we? Sure, what Abby does to Joel is horrifying, but she's only doing it to avenge her father, the Firefly surgeon who Joel killed at the end of the first game. And in swearing to kill Abby, thus continuing the cycle of violence, can we honestly say that Ellie is any better? Still, murdering someone with a golf club is quite evil, so Abby certainly deserves her spot on this list. Number 3. Darth Vader, Star Wars The Force Unleashed. Depending on what choices players make throughout 2008's Star Wars The Force Unleashed, they can spend the entirety of its runtime playing as a baddie. Protagonist Galen Marek is trained by the Sith after all, and although he can ultimately choose to align himself with the light side of the Force, he does also have the option to embrace the dark side. However, one character in the game whose alignment is unquestionable is Space Hitler himself, Darth Vader, and for the first few minutes of The Force Unleashed, players get to experience the world from Vader's point of view. The game begins on Kashyyyk, which is invaded by the Galactic Empire after Imperial spies locate a Jedi survivor of the Great Purge named Kento Marek. Upon his arrival on the planet, Vader proceeds to eliminate the Wookiee resistance before heading to Marek's home to kill him. What fun. When he gets there, though, he finds another powerful Force user, Kento's son, Galen. Vader, of course, still murders Kento, but sensing the power in Galen, he takes the young boy as his secret apprentice. Getting to play as Vader is a bit of a double-edged sword. It is a great deal of fun to force choke the life out of Imperial officers, but we do feel very bad about choking the life out of those Wookiees. I certainly hope none of them were Chewbacca's relatives. Is that racist to say? They're Wookiees. Come on, cut me some slack. Number 2. Big Daddy, BioShock 2. In the OG BioShock, Big Daddies were beefy antagonists that were charged with taking care of the little sisters. If players so wished, they could generally avoid engaging in these hulking behemoths in combat by simply staying away from them, though the rewards for dispatching them, a small or hefty amount of Adam depending on whether you chose to save or harvest the little sister, were easily worth the price of admission. When it came to BioShock 2 though, players themselves became a Big Daddy and got the opportunity to dole out some drill-flavoured justice. Now, admittedly, during the events of Bioshock 2, the actions of Subject Delta are heroic. After being resurrected by the Little Sisters, he fights his way through Rapture in order to save Eleanor, his little sister, from her mother, who intends to use Adam to transfer the minds and memories of all of Rapture's inhabitants into Eleanor in order to create a selfless leader. Big yikes. Still, prior to the events of the game, Subject Delta, like all Big Daddies, is a mindless killing machine, and in our opinion, no number of heroic deeds can undo a lifetime of homicidal drilling. Number 1. Joker, Batman Arkham Knight. When it comes to villains, video game or otherwise, they don't come much dastardlier than the Joker. The self-proclaimed clown prince of crime will seemingly stop at nothing to bring Gotham City to its knees in spectacularly violent fashion, and he'd get away with it as well if it wasn't for that meddling Batman. Naturally, players spend most of Batman Arkham Knight wearing the tight latex of Bruce Wayne's alter ego, but for a few short minutes towards the end of the game, they get to experience things from the Joker's point of view. In an attempt to rescue Commissioner Gordon and Robin, Batman surrenders himself to Scarecrow, who reveals Batman's secret identity to the public and injects him with his proprietary fear toxin in order to try and break him. Within Batman's mind, a war erupts between good and bad, with the latter manifesting itself as, you guessed it, the Joker. Players then get to engage in a little death and destruction, gunning down the likes of Penguin, the Riddler, and Two-Face before Bruce is able to get a handle on things. Obviously, we're not rooting for the Joker, and we're glad that Batman is ultimately able to banish the maniac from his own psyche, but we are a little sad that we didn't get to enjoy more chaos. Maybe next time.